The twin suns of Kepler 442c painted the wheat fields in warm golden light as Park Jin-woo walked through the colony's main street. 3 years had passed since the first transport ships landed on this distant world, and New Eden had grown from a handful of prefab shelters into a thriving community of 2.3 million people. The air smelled of fresh bread from the bakeries and the sweet scent of earth flowers that had somehow adapted to alien soil. Park Jin-woo stopped at the central plaza where children played on swings and slides made from local materials. Kim So-rae, a bright 8-year-old with pigtails, waved at him from the top of a climbing frame. Her parents had been among the first wave of colonists, and she was part of the first generation born under these foreign stars. To her, this was not a distant world in space. This was home. "Administrator Park," she called out, scrambling down the frame with the fearless energy of childhood. "Look what I found." She held up a small blue crystal that had formed naturally in the colony's greenhouse. The local minerals created beautiful formations when mixed with earth plants, something the scientists still did not fully understand. Park Jin-woo smiled and knelt down to examine the crystal. "That's beautiful, So-rae. Maybe you'll be a scientist when you grow up and figure out how these form." The little girl beamed with pride. Around them, the colony hummed with quiet activity. Farmers tended to crops in the outer rings, engineers maintained the atmospheric processors that kept their air clean, and teachers prepared lessons for the colony's growing school system. It was peaceful in a way that Earth had not been for centuries. Lee Tae-min sat in the Defense Coordination Center at the edge of the settlement, monitoring the shipping lanes that connected New Eden to the rest of human space. His job was usually boring. Supply ships arrived every few months, and the occasional science vessel stopped to study the system's unique properties. The Defense Center was more of a traffic control station than anything military. New Eden had no weapons, no warships, no soldiers. They had never needed them. The morning routine reports showed normal patterns. A mining survey 3 systems away, a transport ship 2 days out with medical supplies, and empty space everywhere else. Lee Tae-min sipped his coffee and watched the peaceful green dots on his screens. His biggest concern was usually making sure cargo ships did not interfere with the atmospheric processors during landing. Then his sensors screamed. The alert sirens filled the defense center as dozens of red contacts appeared at the edge of the system. Lee Tae-min's coffee mug crashed to the floor as he stared at his screens. The contacts were massive, moving fast and heading directly toward New Eden. His training kicked in and he began standard first contact procedures, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, this is New Eden Colony Defense. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came not in words but in weapons fire. Energy beams lanced out from the approaching ships, destroying the colony's communication satellites in brilliant flashes of light. Lee Tae-min's screens went dark one by one as the colony's connection to the outside universe was severed. Through his window he could see the ships now. They were unlike anything in human design, sleek and black like obsidian daggers cutting through space. Dozens of them, each one larger than New Eden's biggest transport. They moved with purpose and precision, taking positions around the planet like predators surrounding prey. Park Jin-woo's communicator crackled to life. "Administrator, we have a problem. Multiple unknown ships in system, weapons hot, communications cut." Lee Tae-min's voice was steady despite the fear everyone could hear beneath it. In the plaza, Kim So-rae looked up at the sky where dark shapes blotted out the stars. The other children stopped playing, sensing something wrong in the way the adults began moving with sudden urgency. Parents rushed to gather their families, but there was nowhere to run on a colony world light years from help. The lead ship broadcast a message in perfect English, though the voice that spoke was clearly not human. "Humans of New Eden Colony. I am Commander Thexval of the Veltar Consortium. Your species has contaminated pure space with your expansion. This contamination will be cleansed. Your deaths will serve as demonstration to other humans who dare reach beyond their single world." Park Jin-woo ran toward the emergency broadcast station, knowing he had perhaps minutes to send a warning to Earth. His fingers flew over the controls, encoding everything into a single compressed burst transmission. Kim So-rae's crystal fell from his pocket, forgotten in the rush to warn humanity of what was coming. Lee Tae-min watched helplessly as weapons platforms deployed from the alien ships. He had no shields to raise, no weapons to fire back, no way to protect the families who had trusted him to keep them safe. His hand reached for the emergency beacon, the one device that might carry word of their fate back to Earth. The first energy beams struck the colony's power plant. The lights went out across New Eden as emergency power kicked in. In the plaza, Kim So-rae pressed close to her mother, no longer interested in crystals or climbing frames. The sky had turned dark with ships that had come to kill them all. Park Jin-woo's final message transmitted just as the orbital bombardment began in earnest. The wheat fields that had waved in gentle breezes moments before vanished in nuclear fire. The playground where children had laughed became radioactive ash. The dreams of 2.3 million people died with them under an alien sky, their only crime being human. The emergency beacon from New Eden had traveled for 6 months through the darkness of space, its tiny fusion engine burning steadily as it carried the most horrible news in human history. When it finally reached Earth's outer detection grid, the automated systems flagged it as Priority Alpha and sent it racing toward the inner system. Choi Min-ho had been intelligence director for 12 years, but nothing had prepared him for the message that played on his personal screen in the early hours of a Tuesday morning. Park Jin-woo's final transmission was broken and filled with static, but the words were clear enough. Orbital bombardment. Millions dead. No survivors. The numbers on his screen seemed impossible until he ran them through the verification systems 3 times. The Terran Defense Council met in emergency session within hours. The council chamber, normally filled with discussions about trade routes and colony funding, fell silent as the beacon's message played over the main speakers. 200 representatives from across human space listened to the death of New Eden, and many wept openly as the reality sank in. Han Eugene sat in the front row, her face pale with shock. At 28, she was the youngest person ever elected to represent the outer colonies. Her sister Minyoung had been a teacher on New Eden, working with children like Kim So-rae to build the first schools on an alien world. The last message Han Eugene had received from her sister was 3 weeks before the attack, full of excitement about a student art project featuring Earth animals painted with local minerals. Now Minyoung was gone. The children she taught were gone. The art project would never be finished. 2.3 million people, Choi Min-ho read from his report, his voice steady despite the trembling in his hands. Farmers, scientists, teachers, engineers, doctors. Children who had never seen Earth but carried our hopes for the future. All dead in less than 6 hours. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some demanded immediate military response. Others called for diplomatic contact with alien species to understand what had happened. A few suggested that humanity should pull back from all colony worlds and focus on defending Earth itself. Han Eugene stood slowly and the chamber fell quiet. Everyone knew her loss, and they waited to hear what the youngest among them would say about humanity's darkest day. "My sister sent me pictures," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Children playing games we taught them. Gardens where Earth flowers grew beside alien plants. A place where humans were building something beautiful and peaceful." Her voice grew stronger. "They killed children. They killed teachers and farmers and people whose only crime was being human and daring to live among the stars." Across human space, similar scenes played out as the news spread. On Mars, workers in the deep mines stopped their machines and held moments of silence. On the Jupiter stations, families gathered to remember people they had never met but felt connected to by the simple fact of being human. In the asteroid belt, miners painted New Eden on their ships in letters that could be seen from kilometers away. But humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and news of the attack spread beyond human space as well. In the trading post that served as neutral ground between species, alien merchants whispered about what they had witnessed. The Veltar Consortium had made a terrible mistake, they said. Humans were not like other young species. Song Jae-hyuk worked deep in the intelligence networks that connected Earth to alien information brokers. As a military analyst, his job was to understand potential threats to human colonies, but he had never expected to be investigating genocide. The reports that came back from his alien contacts painted a disturbing picture of the galaxy's established powers. The Kethmori, an ancient species of traders, sent a coded message through their network. The Veltar believe strength comes from showing dominance over weaker species. They have done this many times before. Usually, the targeted species accepts their place as servants or retreats to their home system. The Veltar do not understand that humans respond differently to threats. A contact among the scientific Yildara species was more direct in their assessment. "We have studied human behavior for decades through your scientific exchanges. Your species has a unique trait among galactic civilizations. When faced with existential threats, humans do not retreat or submit. They adapt and innovate at speeds that defy normal biological limits. The Veltar have awakened something they do not understand." Even the warlike Graktel, who rarely communicated with other species, sent a brief message through intermediaries. Humans fight differently. They remember injuries for generations. They plan revenge like others plan meals. The Veltar have started a war they cannot win. But Commander Thexval and the Veltar leadership dismissed such warnings as the fears of lesser species. In their arrogance, they saw the silence from human space as proof that their demonstration had worked. Humans would retreat to their single system and cause no more trouble for the established galactic order. They were wrong. In the depths of Earth's military installations, emergency meetings began. Scientists pulled theoretical research from classified archives. Engineers designed weapons that had only existed in simulation. Deep space reconnaissance ships received new orders and disappeared into the darkness between stars. The galaxy had seen humanity as a young species taking its first steps among the stars. What they had failed to understand was that humanity's greatest strength had always emerged in response to threats that seemed impossible to overcome. From the first human who picked up a stone to defend their tribe to the engineers who built ships to reach other stars, humanity had always found ways to turn survival into victory. New Eden's children would never see another sunrise, but their deaths had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. Deep beneath Mount Baekdu, in facilities that officially did not exist, Dr. Kang Hyun-soo stared at the authorization codes that had just appeared on his secure terminal. For 15 years, he had worked on theoretical physics problems that most scientists considered impossible. Project Stellar Flame existed in the shadows of human science, funded by black budgets and staffed by researchers who had signed papers promising they would take their knowledge to the grave. The codes meant that theory was about to become reality. Dr. Kang walked through corridors carved from solid rock, past laboratories where the most brilliant minds in human space worked on projects that could reshape the galaxy. His team had started with a simple question 15 years ago. Could stellar fusion be artificially disrupted? The math said yes, but the engineering challenges seemed impossible. They needed to create a cascade reaction at the quantum level, something that would spread through a star's core like a virus through a computer system. The breakthrough had come 3 years ago, ironically from research into making fusion power safer on Earth. If they could understand how to prevent fusion cascade failures, they could also understand how to cause them. The weapon existed only in computer simulations, its effects calculated but never tested. Until now, no one had ever wanted to turn a star into a bomb. In the main laboratory, Dr. Kang's team gathered around holographic displays showing the internal structure of stars. Dr. Kim Min-ae, his chief engineer, looked up from her calculations with tired eyes. She had not slept since the authorization came through. The cascade initiators are ready, she reported. 12 devices, each no larger than a briefcase. Once activated, they will disrupt fusion at the quantum level. The reaction spreads naturally through the stellar core, causing complete destabilization within hours. Dr. Kang nodded, though his stomach felt heavy with the weight of what they were creating. How long until total collapse? Computer models show 12 to 18 hours from initiation to supernova. Anything within 3 light years will be completely sterilized. The Veltar home system has 4 inhabited planets. Total population estimated at 3 billion. The number hung in the air like a physical weight. 3 billion lives. More than the entire human population of the outer colonies. Dr. Kang thought about Kim So-rae, the little girl from New Eden whose picture had been shown during the Defense Council briefings. She was dead because an alien commander had decided human expansion was inconvenient. Now they were preparing to kill 3 billion aliens in response. Captain Oh Do-eun received her orders through encrypted channels that bounced through 17 relay stations before reaching her ship. The message was simple. Transport classified cargo to designated coordinates, maintain complete communications silence, avoid all contact with alien vessels. Her ship, the research vessel Quiet Discovery, had been retrofitted for extended deep space operations under the cover of a mineral survey mission. Her crew of 37 had been carefully selected. Each person had lost someone at New Eden, and each had volunteered for a mission they knew might be one way. First Officer Park Sung-min had lost his brother. Engineer Lee Hae-jin had lost her daughter who had been studying xenobiology on the colony. They worked with quiet determination, knowing their cargo could change the course of human history. The Quiet Discovery was not alone. Across human space, 12 ships received similar orders. Each ship carried identical cargo and followed different routes toward the Veltar home system. They disguised themselves as mining vessels, research probes, and commercial transports. Their crews maintained normal communications, filed standard reports, and gave no sign that they carried the components of the most destructive weapon ever conceived. Captain Oh Do-eun stood on her bridge as they passed the halfway point of their journey. Through the viewports, stars looked the same as they always had, tiny points of light in the endless darkness. But she knew that soon one of those stars would die by human hands, and its death would announce humanity's arrival as a galactic power. In the depths of the Geneva complex, 3 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, General Nam Woojin faced the emergency assembly of Earth's leadership. Presidents, prime ministers, colony governors and military commanders filled the secure chamber. The room had been built during Earth's last global war, designed to survive nuclear attack. Now it housed discussions about ending an entire star system. General Nam had spent 40 years in military service, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. He had planned defenses for the first colony ships and helped design the protocols that governed human expansion. Never in his career had he imagined presenting a weapon that could destroy stars. "The technology works," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "Our deep space assets are in position. Dr. Kang's team has confirmed the cascade effect will work as predicted. We can turn their star into our weapon." The chamber was silent as the implications sank in. This was not a conventional military strike. This was the power to end worlds, to kill billions, to announce that humanity would respond to genocide with extinction. "The question before us is not whether we can do this," General Nam continued. "The question is whether we should." The debate that followed lasted 6 hours. Philosophers spoke about the moral weight of revenge. Military leaders discussed the strategic implications of possessing such power. Diplomats worried about how other alien species would react to humanity wielding weapons of stellar destruction. But in the end, the images from New Eden decided the vote. The playgrounds turned to ash. The schools where children learned about Earth animals they would never see. The farms where families had built new lives under alien skies. The vote was unanimous. For New Eden. For the children who would never see another sunrise. For the message that humanity would send to the galaxy about the price of genocide. The Terran fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Veltar space like ghosts materializing from the darkness. 57 ships of various sizes, from massive battleships to small escort vessels, arranged themselves in perfect formation at the boundary of the alien star system. They made no aggressive moves, fired no weapons and sent no threatening messages. They simply waited with the patience of predators. Admiral Bae Sumin stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Righteous Fury, and watched the tactical displays update with enemy positions. The Veltar home system spread before them like a map of targets. 4 inhabited planets, dozens of space stations, and the massive orbital shipyards that had produced the fleet responsible for New Eden's destruction. 3 billion alien lives went about their daily routines, unaware that death had arrived at their doorstep. The Admiral was 53 years old and had spent 30 years in space, rising from a junior navigation officer to command of humanity's most powerful fleet. She had overseen the protection of 17 colony worlds and negotiated peaceful first contact with 6 alien species. But today she was not here to protect or negotiate. Today she carried the collective rage of humanity in the weapons bays of her ships. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Park Jin-ho, looked up from his console. "All ships report ready, Admiral. We're receiving scanning attempts from Veltar vessels throughout the system. They know we're here." Admiral Bae nodded. "Open a channel on all frequencies. Let them hear what humanity has to say." The transmission went out across the Veltar system, carried by radio waves, quantum bursts, and every other form of communication humans had learned to use. It reached military command centers, civilian communication networks, and the personal devices of ordinary Veltar citizens going about their lives. "This is Admiral Bae Sumin of the Terran Defense Fleet," her voice carried clearly through space. 6 months ago your forces destroyed the human colony of New Eden, killing 2.3 million innocent people. We demand the surrender of Commander Thexval and all others responsible for this act of genocide. They will be transported to Earth for trial under the laws of war. She paused, allowing the translation systems time to process her words into the clicking, hissing language of the Veltar. "If you refuse this demand, you will face consequences beyond your comprehension. You have 1 hour to respond." The response came within minutes, broadcast from the massive command station orbiting the Veltar homeworld. Commander Thexval's voice crackled with contempt and amusement, as if he were speaking to children who had made threats they could not understand. "Primitive mammals of Earth," he said, his words translated into cold, mechanical English. "You bring 50 ships to challenge the consortium? We have thousands of vessels in this system alone. Your single star system dares to threaten our empire that spans 100 worlds." On the bridge of the Righteous Fury, Admiral Bae's officers watched their tactical displays update with new contacts. Veltar warships were emerging from hidden bases, launching from orbital facilities, and moving to intercept positions throughout the system. The enemy fleet grew from hundreds to thousands of vessels, each one larger and more heavily armed than the human ships. "Look at your pathetic fleet," Thexval continued, his voice filled with the arrogance of a predator addressing prey. "We destroyed your colony as easily as stepping on insects. We will do the same to your ships, and then we will visit your precious Earth and show your entire species the price of defying the consortium." Lieutenant Yoon Min-ah sat at her monitoring station, watching displays that showed information no other human in the fleet could see. For months, she had tracked the progress of 12 small objects drifting through the Veltar system like pieces of space debris. The objects were no larger than briefcases, powered by tiny fusion cells that produced almost no heat signature. They had traveled for 8 months to reach their destination, moving slowly and silently through the asteroid fields and comet clouds that surrounded every star system. Now those objects floated less than 1,000,000 kilometers from the Veltar sun, close enough to accomplish their terrible purpose but still undetected by enemy sensors. Each one contained components of Dr. Kang's Cascade weapon, designed to work together to disrupt the quantum processes that kept the star burning steadily. "Cascade devices show green across all systems," Lieutenant Yoon reported quietly. "Stellar positioning optimal. All triggers armed and ready for activation on your command, Admiral." Admiral Bay received Thexval's final transmission with the same cold calm she had maintained throughout her career. The alien commander's words were exactly what she had expected. Arrogance, contempt, and the absolute certainty that technological superiority would protect him from the consequences of genocide. "Thexval," she said into her communicator, knowing her words would reach every Veltar in the system. "You killed children who were playing in gardens under an alien sun. You murdered teachers and farmers whose only crime was being human. You erased 2.3 million people because you decided their existence was inconvenient." The Veltar fleet continued to mobilize, thousands of warships taking combat positions around their homeworld. Their weapons charged, their shields activated, and their commanders prepared for what they assumed would be a quick and decisive battle against the primitive humans. "We gave you a chance to face justice," Admiral Bay continued. "You have chosen extinction instead." She turned to Lieutenant Yoon and gave the order that would change the galaxy forever. "Activate Cascade Protocol. Authorization Bay 77 New Eden." Lieutenant Yoon's hands moved over her controls with practiced precision. Deep in the heart of the Veltar system, 12 small devices received their activation codes and began the process that would turn a star into humanity's weapon. Thexval never noticed the quantum disruption beginning in his son's core. Dr. Kang Hyun-soo watched from the observation deck of the science vessel Prometheus as his life's work began to unfold in the heart of an alien star. The Cascade devices had activated simultaneously, 12 points of quantum disruption spreading through the Veltar sun's core like cracks spreading through glass. On his instruments, he could see the fusion processes that had burned steadily for billions of years beginning to collapse. The star had been stable that morning, converting hydrogen to helium in the same nuclear dance that powered every star in the galaxy. Now, deep in its core, the careful balance of forces was failing. Quantum fields that had maintained fusion stability were breaking down, creating cascade failures that spread outward through layers of superheated plasma. "Cascade effect confirmed," Dr. Kang reported to Admiral Bay through the secure communication link. "Stellar core destabilization proceeding as predicted. Point of no return reached in approximately 6 hours." The Veltar had noticed something was wrong with their star within the first hour. Their scientists detected unusual energy signatures, fluctuations in solar output that their instruments had never recorded before. Emergency meetings convened across their homeworld as physicists struggled to understand what was happening to their sun. Commander Thexval received the first reports from his science division while preparing his fleet for battle against the human ships. The news made no sense to him. Stars did not simply become unstable without cause. Natural stellar collapse took millions of years, not hours. His scientists insisted their readings were correct, but he dismissed their concerns as cowardice in the face of battle. Then the star's output began to fluctuate visibly, its light dimming and brightening in patterns that sent panic through the Veltar system. Emergency broadcasts filled the communication networks as ordinary citizens noticed their sun behaving in ways that violated everything they understood about stellar physics. By the 4th hour, even Thexval could not ignore the growing chaos. Space stations reported dangerous radiation levels as the star's magnetic field destabilized. The outer planets began experiencing communication failures as solar storms unlike anything in recorded history lashed through the system. Dr. Kang monitored the progression from his instruments, watching quantum disruption spread through stellar matter like a disease. The cascade was irreversible now, a chain reaction that would continue until the star's core could no longer maintain fusion. What had taken nature billions of years to create would be destroyed in less than a day by human science. The breakthrough moment came in the 6th hour, when the Veltar's own scientists confirmed what Dr. Kong had known from the beginning. Their star was dying, killed by artificial disruption of quantum processes they barely understood. The reports reached Thexval's command center just as his fleet was taking final positions for battle against the human ships. "Impossible," he screamed at his science advisors. "Stars do not die in hours. Your instruments are malfunctioning." But the evidence was overwhelming. Spectral analysis showed quantum cascade failures spreading through the solar core. Energy output was becoming increasingly erratic as fusion processes collapsed in sequence. Mathematical models all pointed to the same conclusion: total stellar collapse within hours. Thexval's final transmission to the human fleet was filled with a terror no warrior should ever have to face. His voice cracked as he broadcast on all frequencies, abandoning the contempt that had marked his earlier communications. "Human fleet, this is Commander Thexval. We surrender. We yield to all your demands. Stop this madness. You cannot kill an entire star system. There are 3 billion civilians here, including children." Admiral Bay received the transmission on her bridge, where she stood surrounded by officers who had lost friends and family at New Eden. Her response came without hesitation, delivered with the coldness of absolute judgment. "New Eden had children who will never see another sunrise," she said, her words carrying across space to reach every Veltar in the dying system. "Neither will you." The cascade reached critical threshold in the 10th hour. Dr. Kang's instruments showed the stellar core beginning its final collapse as quantum disruption overwhelmed the nuclear forces that had held it together for billions of years. The star that had warmed the Veltar homeworld since their species first looked up at the sky was entering its death throes. Emergency evacuations began across the Veltar system, but there was nowhere to run. Their fastest ships could not outrun the expanding wave of destruction that would follow stellar collapse. Billions of civilians crowded into whatever vessels they could find, knowing their efforts were hopeless but unable to simply wait for death. The star went supernova 12 hours after the cascade began, releasing more energy in seconds than it had produced in the previous million years. The Veltar homeworld vanished first, its continents and oceans vaporized by temperatures that melted atoms. The other inhabited planets followed within minutes as the expanding wave of stellar fire consumed everything within 3 light-years. Communications Officer Park Se-jin stood at his station aboard the Righteous Fury, watching long-range sensors confirm the complete destruction of the Veltar system. The star that had anchored their civilization was now an expanding cloud of superheated plasma, and 3 billion lives had ended in nuclear fire. Admiral Bay nodded to him, and Park Se-jin activated the galaxy-wide communication network that connected all known intelligent species. His message went out through quantum relays, hyperspace transmissions, and every other form of faster-than-light communication humanity had learned to use. "This is the Terran Defense Fleet broadcasting to all civilizations." His voice carried across hundreds of star systems. "The Veltar Consortium has been eliminated in response to their unprovoked genocide of human civilians at New Eden Colony. Let this serve as notification to all species. Humanity remembers. Humanity protects its own. Choose your actions accordingly." The message reached trading posts, diplomatic stations, and the homeworlds of dozens of alien civilizations within hours. Across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as a primitive single-system power suddenly understood they had been catastrophically wrong. The galaxy had a new apex predator, and it had just demonstrated that extinction was humanity's gift to those who threatened their young.